Okay.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the warehouse. We have Derek here, where Isla was before.
Hello.
Derek's just taken us through the whole process of the malting that we do at Kilhoman. That was quite a lot of detail, which people love. Lots of really good comments. Lots of people really interested by the malting process, because it's not something that you see a lot. You know, there's only 10 or 12 distilleries in Scotland. So yeah, we've got lots of questions. But actually, before we do that, I challenged Derek to sort of like get rid of all the detail, if you like, and just break down malting into the most simple terms. So go.
That's very difficult for me because, you know, I like to talk quite a lot. But no, in simple terms, I mean, I was talking about 3 stages, but I missed out one of the most important stages, and that's growing the barley. Once that barley is grown and harvested, we use it. Well, sorry, rewind a little bit. It's dried, so you know it goes into dormancy. To bring that out of dormancy, we soak it in water. We kick off germination. We control that germination to the optimum point where we can extract the maximum amount of sugar in that barley kernel to be used in the mash process. Yeah. And that will give us maximum yield, really. That's what we're looking for, efficiencies. So that's really the crux of it. And of course, I missed out the end stage where after trying to keep brief. Yeah. But you know, once it is germinated, we need to stop it somehow. So we're going to dry it, but also just prior to the drying, we need to flavour it. So that's, as I talked about, quite to quite a bit of depth.
I guess that's the big sort of flavour add that you guys have in the malting blend. Yeah. You know, you're adding that peat, and that's the real. The rest of it's sort of about the efficiencies to a large degree, isn't it?
Yeah, control.
Yeah, yeah. So we'll just run through all the questions that came in, and then there'll probably be some more. So if you have any more questions while we're chatting, just fire away, and if you see me checking my phone and things, I'm not being rude to Derek. I'm just trying to keep up with the questions. But the first one was is whether there's a difference between different varieties in terms of how they malt. You know, do they behave differently on the malt floor?
Well, with my kind of limited experience here at Kilhoman and on Isla, I'll get that caveat out there right now. But you know, my understanding is that there will be slight variations, and that will reflect during the time of year, temperatures, ambient temperatures. You know, when it was harvested, what percentage moisture is dried up. There'll be a host of factors, but ultimately, you know, once it started germinating, some might be quicker, some might be slower, but once it's germinating, it's really down to you to control that process.
I guess the biggest changeable factor is the weather, isn't it, really? Because you have to be very aware of the weather that day and the weather in the coming days, don't you?
Yeah, of course. And I mean, in basic terms, it's a traditional malt floor. So we've got windows, so we can control the humidity, we can control the temperature, we can thin the malt, we can thicken it up. You know, we're controlling the temperature manually, basically, and simply.
Because so to clarify that, the malt, when it's germinating, it creates its own heat, doesn't it? Which then creates more growth.
That's right.
You know, so, yeah. And because there was a question about whether the malt floor is sort of if it's temperature controlled.
Well, there's been lots of discussions about kind of heated floors, and you know, that's bringing more technology and more expense and more control into it. Yes, it may be easier, but ultimately, when you've got 2 or 3 people looking after them all, we've achieved it quite successfully.
And there was a question about why do we bother doing the malting when others, or we have the option and others mostly just buy from a malting house. So, you know.
I think for various reasons, but ultimately, again, it's about control. You know, it's our barley. It's not going to travel far. You know, we're kind of trying to keep those environmental aspects involved as well. But you know, it's our barley. We can malt it when we want. It's on the, you know, as we need it. So it's all about that, and it's unique as well. You know, there's not many people doing it in this case.
And then there's a question about the taste benefit, and I think that probably links in with the peat. You know, because as I said, that's the big flavour add at the malting stage. You know, so how do you feel that the sort of, that specific peat that you cut yourself, how do you feel that kind of influences the character of the whiskey?
Well, again, limited experience. I mean, I drink whiskey, I love whiskey, but I couldn't really sit down and do a taste test between machine cut peat.
Do you want my take on it?
I'd love your take.
Should we swap seats? No.
It's all about
to me, I learned, you live literally at the end of the drive down to Kilhoman, and the whole island has big storms, whether it's summer or winter, and that sea spray rolls in over all the fields, all of the peat bog, and I go out to the car at the end of the day. It was pretty blustery the other day, and the windscreen's coated in salt, and that's happening day after day, year after year, thousands of years on the peat bog.
Yep.
And that salt is very much within the peat, and as well as that, the movements in the sea levels over the years, and the sort of that real salty, medicinal, slightly iodine kind of character really is the unique factor with iodine.
I do see where you're going with that, and I mean, peat is used in the whiskey industry all over Scotland.
Yeah. But
the peat is different. Geographical locations, the peat is different. Naturally. So it is a unique thing here now.
And there was a question about where the peat came from, and I believe.
Well, it Banks of Loch Gorm, it's just down the road, so literally 300 or 400 yards away from the distillery. So you
recently won the contract for the bidding process for supplying the peat. So you have your own peat bank.
Yeah, I mean, as I say, I've been doing it a couple of seasons now. I'm learning. It's a school day on the peat bank. There's lots of experts around, as we know. But I think. I enjoy it. It's a physical thing, and the whole malt process. I mean, we didn't actually touch on that, but it's a physical job. Yeah. It's hard work, turning the floor and up in the kiln. Yeah. Every 2 hours. It's a physical job. I mean, when I started only 7 months ago, I was 23 stone. Now, that's an exaggeration, but it's a physical job.
They don't recognise you from the picture. From the thing. Right, so how much peat do we use per batch? That was another question.
I would say, if you can imagine a wheelbarrow full of peats, I would say that's about right. I said in our interview, the fire is on for maybe 9.5 hours to 10 hours. So, with a decent fire, dampen it down, controlling it, you can use the crumbly pieces of peat as well, just to...
What do you call that?
Calf.
Yeah.
So that will increase that. It'll dampen the fire down, take the heat out of the fire, but keep that white smelly smoke.
Yeah. And then there's a question about, what are the questions here? So what's the source of heat for drying the germinating barley?
The source of heat for drying it, yes, well, it's an oil-fired boiler.
So it's like basically it. I describe it as like a big hairdryer.
It's a giant domestic boiler. It is a huge hairdryer.
PPM, how do you know when / that you have achieved the level you want?
I thought this question might come up. I mean, really, in the early days of malting here at Kilhoman, you would have done specific tests, and I would imagine you'll do that in the future. But really, again, it's based on experience. 9 to 10 hours gives us roughly, it could be 19, it could be 21 parts per million, but it's going to be ballpark.
Yeah, I mean, I was even chatted with the guys down at the Port Ellen Maltings. I went and had a look. I've been meaning to do it for years. And down there, there's actually, as you peat more, the ability to get an accurate peat measure is very hard. And we get any peat, the barley that we buy from them and we say is 50 ppm, because that's the spec that they're aiming for.
Yeah.
Can be anything from like mid-30s to 60 ppm. And it all depends on... I forgot his name, but I should. Anyway, he was saying that it comes down to the peat, whether it's been lying outside, whether that the phenol content has maybe leached out of it. It comes down to any number of factors, and by nature, it's just not an exact science.
Sure.
No matter how controlled you try it, smoking something is just not an exact science. Right. Also, there was a question about the sort of environmental side. It's very hard to comment on it.
I did. I was a little bit. I was thinking hard about mentioning an environmental issue. But you know, you can't hide away from it. There is an environmental impact associated with peat.
Yeah.
You know, the whiskey industry is massive. Peat takes a long time to grow, and that's why I made the kind of a little slight difference between hand cut peat and machine cut peat. I think, although there's lots of restrictions on policy and rules and guidance about machine cut peat and returning the environment back to how it was looking before you cut the peat, and that's much the same as the hand cut peat bank. You need to try and keep a tidy bank. And look after the environment as much as you can.
Yeah. We got any more questions, Catherine? Have I missed anything?
Just the ones in the group chat. I think you've answered most of them.
I think we've got them.
What's the amount of peat, volume, weight, whatever you measure it in, that you use per batch of what tonnage of barley?
So we,
a lot of numbers.
The batches of malt are how much?
Well, we've changed, depending on the time of year again. This time of year, I think we're going to drop to 3 tons of barley in each kind of malt floor process.
Because it's a bit warmer, yeah.
A bit warmer, and sometimes more difficult to manage. In the winter, we're at 4 tons.
Yeah.
Didn't answer the question.
So 4 tons, and then we're using, you answered the peat question earlier. So 3 to 4 tons is about 1 wheelbarrow of peat. You know, we're not using vast quantities of peat. So it's the sort of question about environment, and we're very aware of our responsibility to the sort of land and the wildlife here on Islay. But the amount we use in particular is really quite small, about 1 wheelbarrow a week, approximately 1 to 2 wheelbarrows a week. So it is pretty minimal, but even that, you know, we need to be aware of what we're doing.
Of course.
There's less people use it in their houses now as well.
Yeah. So the population of Islay has dropped significantly over the years, and as there have been modern technologies, you know, everyone has an oil-fired boiler these days, whereas traditionally they would have been burning peat to heat their homes. So the sort of use of peat over the years is probably perhaps at its lowest now than it ever has been on the island. So
there's one more question come in. The max peat level that you could achieve through our kiln, and somebody else had asked on Instagram about where we're going in the future.
I think it's just a matter of timing. I mean, you could have a peat fire on for far longer than 9 to 10 hours, and you would get a peatier product at the end of the day. And people do that. Distilleries do that.
The kiln floor, I mean, it's a new kiln floor now. I remember back in the day where you can see the old kiln at Kilhome. It's about a third of the size, maybe smaller. And we had real issues getting more peat into the barley because it lay much thicker. Now we've got the new kiln. It's bigger, we can lay it out a bit thinner. And that allows us, I think, I mean, I'm also talking theory here.
Yeah.
It's basically what I've heard third hand from you and my dad.
I mean, it is quite tight there. When you get 4 ton of malt in there, it's quite a job to turn it. And, you know, it's a unique environment when Karen and I are in there, turning it every 2 hours. It's
you should get my dad in there.
A good bit
you
of
might find you've got an automatic turning machine within the week.
It gets hot and sweaty, put it that way.
Oh, no more said. Good. Okay. Well, I think we've got a pretty good insight into everything malting. So thank you very much.
You're welcome,
Derek. Next up at 2 o'clock, we are going to be in the still house with Robin. I describe Robin as trying to control a toddler because he's very easily distracted. So trying to do an interview with him when we're distilling as well, and we've got a much smaller team than normal is quite a challenge, as you'll see. So I hope you'll tune in at 2 o'clock, and then that again will be followed by a live Q&A with Robin. So any questions, put them in the comment section of the Premiere feed, the video feed, or switch over and ask them on the live Q&A. Thanks very much. See you at 2 o'clock.